There's nothing worse than letting your team down, and in football, the best way to do that is to score an own goal. It can be a moment of madness, a lapse of judgment, or just a lack of skill. Stick around as we count down the worst own goals in women's football. Laura Bassett. England have never had a lot of luck in international competitions. From Maradona's hand of God to David Beckham missing a penalty, it seems like something always goes wrong. So it's no surprise that an English player is on the list. The English women's team were within touching distance of a World Cup final in 2015. It was the semi-finals and all they had to do was beat Japan. England had been playing well the entire campaign and had scored one back against Japan to make it even at 1-1. It looked like the match would be decided in extra time or a penalty shootout until the second minute of stoppage time. Japan sent a lofty cross into the box, hoping that some magic could happen for them, and it did. Laura Bassett tried to intercept the cross with a sliding kick, but instead sent the ball flying high into the air over a goalkeeper and into the net. It was heartbreaking. It was the final seconds of the match and Bassett had played well all game. Her teammate after the game said that she was devastated for Laura Bassett and that the ball probably would have gone in anyway. Bassett said later that not a moment went by that she didn't think about the mistake. Thankfully, the British media were not too hard on her and said that the whole team had done their country proud. On the biggest stage in the world, these kinds of things can happen, but that's why we love sport. Waron Boonsing. Usually the one player you can rely on to keep the ball out of the goal is the goalkeeper. That's their job, and they even use their hands to do it. It was a 2019 World Cup and Thailand were facing a tough rival Chile, but they had a strong team and they had worked hard to get to where they were going. The Thai goalkeeper Waron Boonsing had done well in the first half to keep out all of Chile's shots on goal, but it all went wrong in the second half when the ball was passed into the box. A first touch shot sent the ball into the side post before bouncing back out. But Boonsing was caught off guard by the bounce back and she fumbled it into the goals with her feet. It was a terrible moment for the goalkeeper and all she could do was laugh. At least the stakes weren't too high. Thailand were at the bottom of the table and they couldn't make it to the next round anyway. The game was more dramatic for Chile. They needed to win by 3 goals to qualify for the knockout stages, but only managed 2. Their chance came when in the 86th minute they earned a penalty kick. Francisca Lara took the kick and smashed into the crossbar, just missing the goal. Chile were devastated after missing out by so little. They could have just used one more own goal from Boonsing. Lepalbay. At the 2011 World Cup, the United States were big favourites. They had been at the top of women's soccer for 2 decades and not much was slowing them down. But in the group stages, they were shocked by a Swedish team that gave them a run for their money. The first goal came after a careless tackle by an American defender led to a penalty. Sweden were a goal up and now they had to fight to keep it. But they were in for some more luck when they got another free kick outside the box. The Swedish player Fischer took the kick and it went straight into defender Lepalbay. As it came towards her, she knocked it up with a thigh and sent it flying high into the air. The goalkeeper was wrong-footed and the whole team watched hopelessly as the ball dropped into the back of the net. It was definitely a match to forget for the United States defence. They managed to score one back, but it was too little too late. Luckily, it was just the group stages, and both the US and Sweden went through to the knockout stages. Lepalbay probably has flashbacks of the goal every time she goes to IKEA. Kim Doyoung. South Korea were over the moon to qualify for the World Cup in 2019. They had qualified in 2003 and 2015, but had been beaten pretty badly both times. Their 2019 campaign didn't start too much better either. They faced France in the group stage at their home ground in Paris and were beaten by 4 goals. But they weren't giving up, and their next opponent was Nigeria, who they had more of a chance against. They almost scored from a well-worked chance early in the first half, before a mistake by Kim Doyoung gave Nigeria the advantage. In the 20th minute, a long through ball came high into the box and it looked like Doyoung had it covered. She got into the right position to block it, but then volleyed the ball past the keeper who had come running out to meet it. There was a glimmer of hope for Doyoung though. The virtual assistant referee, VAR, was used to see if the Nigeria player had touched the ball with her hand on the way through. Unfortunately, she wasn't so lucky and the goal was allowed. VAR never has a happy ending. Wendy Rennard. Rennard has played for Lyon for 16 years and represented France for almost as long. She's one of the most feared defenders in the world. She uses her height, her strength and her technical ability to close down attackers. It was a group stage match against Norway and France were the big favourites. They were at the top of the table and were on track to cruise through to the finals. France were dominating the game in chances and shots until they broke through with a goal just after half-time. But then came the most bizarre moment of Rennard's career. Norway crossed the ball past the goals and it was heading straight to Rennard. It was coming pretty slowly when Rennard intercepted it, but instead of kicking it out, she gently tapped it into the back of the net. She realised her mistake immediately and covered her head in her hands. Everyone watched the game was confused. Rennard could have just let the ball pass through and it would have gone out of bounds. It must have been some kind of brain fade because the French defender has never done anything like that before in her career. Maybe she was just trying to give Norway a chance in the match. Well, it doesn't matter because France scored again later on to take the victory. I bet Rennard was breathing a sigh of relief after that one. A hat-trick of own goals? Normally a hat-trick is a moment of celebration, but for one New Zealand player, it was the worst day of her professional career. Michaela Moore is a professional footballer from New Zealand. She plays as a defender and has had a pretty successful career. She rose through the ranks in her home country to play in the German league with FC Köln and Duisburg. In 2020, she was signed by the legendary football club Liverpool and still plays there. But those achievements were all forgotten on February 20 of this year. It was the She Believes Cup in the United States. The New Zealand team must have been nervous because they were up against the #1 team in the world, the United States. And it looked like Moore was the most nervous of them all. Just 4 minutes into the game, she tried to clear a ball that had been crossed into the box. She volleyed it and it went straight back into the back of her net. Her own net. That was pretty bad, but it couldn't get much worse, right? Wrong. Just a minute later, she headed the ball again into the back of her own team's goals. Fans were beginning to think that she was confused about which end they were aiming towards. But then incredibly, half an hour later, she completed her hat trick of own goals by again failing to clear a cross properly. Understandably, she was substituted off a few minutes afterwards. It's hard not to feel bad for her. Everything was going wrong for her, and we've all had one of those days. It's just unlucky for her that her bad day lives on the internet forever. Well, at least she can say she scored a hat-trick against the best team in the world. Things can get heated on the pitch, and in sport, you never know what's going to happen next. Make sure you check out the 10 craziest moments in women's football.